The Dorchester was docked there in New York City. The chaplains joined the throngs of men that were gathering on board the ship.
There were 4 chaplains. One was a Roman Catholic priest named John Washington. Another was a Jewish rabbi named Alexander Good.
There was 2 Protestants, Chaplain Poling and Chaplain Fox.
They were all lieutenants. They had all gone to chaplain school.
And the 4 of them found that they all had so much in common. They thought in terms of humanity and not just in terms of their own individual community.
That you had 4 chaplains who were of differing religious backgrounds and different faith groups, but were able to put aside those differences was really a testimony to their understanding that in order to be victorious, we had to work together.
A lesson the chaplains would teach every day with every breath. A lesson that would prove vital when the ship and its young soldiers sailed into deadly waters and into the crosshairs of a Nazi wolf pack.
After the Dorchester left St. John's and went into the open sea, the Germans got word that the convoy was heading toward Greenland.
The Dorchester was now on a collision course with the enemy. Fear would stalk the decks. Its primary antidote, faith, and the 4 chaplains who understood its power.
On February 3rd, 1943, at 1 o'clock in the morning, we heard this tremendous explosion. We were hit by a torpedo. The torpedo hit into the right side of the ship. Everything went black. All lights disappeared.
Because everybody running like lunatics. It was every man for himself.
People frantic. People forgot their life preservers. People didn't have clothes on. Some of them were crying. They were just caught completely surprised, and they didn't know what to do.
The chaplains made their way to the top deck, doing everything that they could to try to give soldiers some direction in order to save as many lives as they possibly could.
The 4 chaplains took off their life preservers and gave it to men who didn't have a life preserver on. And they gave it to them so that they could possibly survive this ordeal.
The ship was about to go down, but the chaplains were about to lift their men to new heights. The 4 would come together to shine a beacon of hope in the ship's darkest hour.
That's when I saw these 4 men standing arm in arm on the top of the boat.
The chaplains locked arms and prayed together.
They linked arms, and then they joined in singing hymns, each of them in a different language. One was Latin, one was Hebrew, another was English, and they were humming these songs while the ship went down.
To see them in that disheveled moment of disaster all around them, and yet this inner calm in these 4 men as they ministered to the people around them was, as one man said, as close to heaven as I ever hoped to be.
Hello and welcome to our COVID-19 version of the Jewish War Veterans Annual Remembrance Ceremony of the Four Chaplains and presentation of the 2021 Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award. I'm Richard Goldenberg, Commander of the Jewish War Veterans Capital District Council, representing posts 105 in Albany, 106 in Schenectady, Saratoga Springs Post 36, and Amsterdam Post 401. For viewers who may be new to our program, the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America has held a commemorative event since 1965 to remember the Four Chaplains and honor those in their own community who live up to their ideals. This year, obviously unlike any other, marks our 56th remembrance and presentation of the Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award. We are honored again to partner with the First Reformed Church here in Schenectady to remain socially distant, but still return to the polling chapel. While we could not welcome all of our guests and friends to the chapel during a global pandemic, we hope that this brief video presentation brings the spirit of the Four Chaplains to you. We're grateful for the support of the First Reformed Church, for welcoming the JWV and joining with us to honor and remember the sacrifice of the Four Chaplains in 1943. So why do we gather for this after so many years? Why is our emphasis on unity without uniformity so important today? On the bitter cold night of February 3rd, 1943, as America was still ramping up its role in the Second World War, the troop ship Dorchester was on its last night of its journey to Greenland. On board were 904 soldiers, merchant marines, and civilians. They included 4 newly minted Army chaplains, Reverend George Fox, a Methodist minister from Lewiston, Pennsylvania, Rabbi Alexander Good from Brooklyn, New York, Dutch Reformed Reverend Clark Poling from Schenectady, New York, and Father John Washington, a Roman Catholic priest from Newark, New Jersey. With troops below decks, at approximately 1 a.m., an enemy torpedo ripped into the Dorchester's starboard side. The explosion tore a hole near the engine room from below the waterline to the top deck. The Four Chaplains appeared on the steeply sloping starboard side. Calmly, they guided men to their lifeboat stations. They distributed life jackets to men who had left theirs below deck. And when these ran out, each chaplain, without hesitation, removed his jacket and gave it to the young soldiers desperately searching for help and guidance as the ship sank. Petty Officer John Mahoney, reeling from the cold, headed back towards his cabin. "Where are you going?" a voice of calm asked. "To get my gloves," Mahoney replied. "Here, take these," said Rabbi Good, as he handed a pair of gloves to the young man. "I can't take those gloves," Mahoney replied. "Never mind," the rabbi responded. "I have 2 pairs." It was only long after that Mahoney realized the chaplain never intended to leave the ship. Finally, with arms linked as a symbol of their common bond, the Four Chaplains remained on the deck, each praying in his own way, but to the same God, as the Dorchester slid into the black waters, carrying them to everlasting glory. Of the 904 men aboard, 605 were lost. We look back at the World War II generation today with reverence and admiration. The achievement of American society unified against fascism is a tale for the ages. But the United States in 1943 was still in the midst of defining itself and readying all Americans for the efforts to come. The shock of Pearl Harbor in December 1941 was only 15 months past. The Germans were fighting at the gates of Stalingrad. U-boats were the terror of the Atlantic. The Japanese were preparing their final defense at Guadalcanal. Allies had only landed in North Africa, but the fighting was slow in Tunisia. Terrible American lessons had been learned at the hands of Rommel and the Afrika Korps at Kasserine Pass. Victory was not a certainty for Americans reading the news each day. Bringing the entire nation together was no easy task, and yet the sacrifice of the Four Chaplains become a defining moment for the United States to unify and commit itself to the fight. The loss of the Dorchester and the heroism of the Four Chaplains was a symbol of Americanism across faiths. It marks the first real Judeo-Christian representation of American unity. Today we acknowledge that unity without uniformity, a commitment to serve God in a variety of ways. It is a lesson all too powerful for us today. As Americans, we stand stronger when we stand together, regardless of religion, regardless of race, of gender, of politics, of background, or of status. Unity without uniformity. We accomplish so much more when we stand as one. We learned that almost 80 years ago in a war that saw service and sacrifice across our nation. Today, we have seen more deaths from the COVID-19 pandemic than the number of Americans who died in all of World War II, enough to fill every existing burial plot at Arlington National Cemetery. Let that sink in for a moment. Since December 1st of last year, Americans have died at a rate of nearly 9 fatalities every 5 minutes. Our fight today still requires unity of effort, a determination to take the steps to protect our individual health, to limit the chances of spreading this disease, and to take the vaccine as it is available to us. It is an ask of our society unlike anything we've seen in 100 years. We've heard time and time again that we are all in this together. We are all vulnerable and we are all hurting in some form. The chaplains would see that we are also stronger in our unity of effort. They would see the communities coming together to help feed those in need, care for seniors, support our essential workers and healthcare professionals, and most importantly, take the individual actions that help others every single day. There are so many lessons for today, and it is in that spirit we gather again to honor the legacy and service of the Four Chaplains. In 2004, the surviving first officer of the U-boat, which fired the fatal torpedo at the Dorchester, spoke at the memorial ceremony. Gerhard Busk was brought to Washington, D.C. by the Immortal Chaplains Foundation to attend these memorial ceremonies. U-233 escaped after firing the fatal torpedo at the Dorchester, but was sunk almost a year later by British destroyers, with the loss of most of its crew. We ought to love when others hate, Busk said at the ceremony. We can bring faith where doubt threatens. We can awaken hope where despair exists. We can light up a light where darkness reigns. We can bring joy where sorrow dominates. These words, as well as any other, represent the lessons of the Four Chaplains. I am so happy to share this program in this very special place with Lynn Bodden of First Reformed Church, and especially pleased to welcome storyteller Joe Doolittle from the congregation to share some unique reflections on Clark Poling and his life with the First Reformed Church.
Thank you, Richard. Welcome to the First Reformed Church of Schenectady and to this service of commemoration and recognition. My name is Lynn Carmen Bodden, and I am the interim senior pastor of the congregation. Because Bill Levering retired in mid-October, and because I'll be here as the church gains its bearing and searches for its next pastoral leader, it's my honor to represent the church at this service. We are holding this ceremony in the Poling Chapel of First Reformed Church, named in honor of the Reverend Clark V. Poling, who came to serve this church as pastor in the spring of 1938. It was a challenging time in the life of this congregation, and Poling was a brand new pastor, 27 years old, and 1 year out of Yale Divinity School. His energy and confidence and plans for the future gave this church a real shot in the arm. He was an enthusiastic educator. He cared about his congregation. He was also concerned with what was going on in the world. And as World War II began to unfold, first in Europe and then in the Pacific, he shared with the congregation his commitment that the church had an important role in times of crisis. Early in 1942, he applied to become a chaplain in the United States Army. The church granted him leave. So in the months before his departure to serve, he began to prepare the congregational leadership for his absence, including encouraging a more full inclusion of women in leadership. In December 1942, he shipped out. On Valentine's Day 1943, a telegram from the War Department was shared in church that Lieutenant Clark Poling was missing in action. His story and that of the other three chaplains, Father Washington, Rabbi Good, and Reverend Fox, and their sacrifice on behalf of others aboard the SS Dorchester on February 3rd, is what gathers us here. That day, the chaplains' decision to offer their life vests that others might survive continues to shape the life of this congregation in both ways, conscious and unconscious. People of this church know this story, and they have seen in the self-sacrifice of Poling and the other chaplains so that others might live as an enduring example of faith in action and the best of humanity. Speaking on behalf of the people of First Reformed Church, I know we are blessed to keep this memory of February 3rd, 1943 alive, not just in story, but in continuing to show our faith in action and continuing to recognize the deep humanity of others who serve sacrificially, as healthcare workers of this state and across the world have done in the face of the battle against COVID-19 this past year. We are honored to be a part of this service. We thank you for joining us, and we welcome you here today.
Hello, I'm Joe Doolittle, a member of First Reformed Church, and I'm going to share a story of Reverend Clark Poling and the Four Chaplains. First, Reverend Poling was the pastor of this church in 1941 when he left for World War II. He'd come here 3 years earlier, 2 years out of the Yale Divinity School, young, vibrant, charming, had a beguiling smile. People loved him. He blessed them with a wedding of his wife a year after he arrived, and a year and a half after that, he blessed them with a little baby, Clark Jr., called Corky. And then World War II started. Pearl Harbor happened. And as a 30-year-old man, he felt pulled in several directions: family, duty to country, congregation, community. He talked it over with several people in the church. He talked it over with his dad, who had been an Army chaplain in World War I, and decided to answer the call to service in the military. He enlisted in the Army, was sent to training, and the training included a chaplain school at Harvard University. And there he met 3 other chaplains who he would become fast friends with. There was Rabbi Sandy Alexander Good. He was from Harrisburg. There was John Washington. He was a priest from Newark, New Jersey. And there was George Fox, who was a Methodist minister from northern Vermont. And they called Fox the old man because he was 42. The rest of them were all hugging 30. Now they bonded up and learned at the end of their training that they were posted to the same post. Didn't know where it was, but they were posted together, and that pleased them greatly. So they went home to say their goodbyes to family and friends and congregation And a bittersweet time it was. And they reconnected on board the Dorchester, a converted luxury liner troop ship that was headed to Europe. And now chaplaincy is a ministry of really presence, just being there. And they bonded with their men. They joked around and had little groups of discussion. And they got to Halifax and they regrouped their convoy and they took off again. And the second night out of Halifax, the captain of the transport ship said, "Sleep in your life jackets tonight and in your clothes, because we're in Submarine Alley and I can never predict what's going to happen." Well, it got hot under the ship where the guys all slept. So many of them didn't sleep in their life jackets or sleep in all their clothes. And at 12 o'clock or so, when the torpedo from the U-233 hit, there was just bedlam. And there were people coming up on deck, and it was cold, and they didn't have their life jackets, and they didn't have their clothes on. It was a wreck, but the chaplains were there. The chaplains were calm, and they guided them to lifeboats, and they guided them to places where they could get some clothes. And most important, they opened up a locker of life jackets. They took those life jackets out and they gave them to the guys that didn't have any. And when they emptied, they gave the soldiers their own life jackets. Now, only 230 men made it to safety off of that ship. There were 670 casualties. And the four chaplains were seen on the bow as the boat went down, clutched together, and those in the water and in the lifeboats could hear them praying and encouraging the men in the water. And they went down with the boat, arms around each other. Now, the furor of the sinking was pretty significant. And the memory of the brave chaplains and the gift of their own lives and just overtook the country. And they were awarded with a special medal in Congress, all the things. But in some ways, the lasting presence may be the memory of people. It certainly was the memory of Clark Polling's father. He organized a not-for-profit in 1947 to the memory of the four chaplains and for what they stood for. His comment was, if men could die in brotherhood together, then they could certainly live in peace together. And that was the principle and the purpose of the Four Chaplains Foundation, and a chapel that they built on the Navy Yard in downtown Philadelphia. And it's interesting because when he structured the board of that not-for-profit, Clark Polling's dad picked the respective faiths, the respective branches of the military, some government, but there were two spots reserved for the German government and for the family of the captain of the U-233. Because in Clark's dad's mind, you couldn't have a realistic peace without everybody who was wanting to be peaceful was at the table. And that may be the lasting, memorable thing. The foundation, the chapel are still functioning. They've cared for chaplains in the four services. They've chaplains in healthcare settings, and they've worked for peace among peoples that needed a little assist in that regard. Chaplaincy is a ministry of presence, and the presence of the four chaplains continues. Thank you.
Let us pray. God of compassion and peace, as we gather together today for this virtual award and remembrance ceremony, we recall the example of sacrifice offered by the four chaplains. Their example of selfless service continues to inspire and challenge us today. May their legacy be a better world and their memories a blessing. May their values of duty and sacrifice continue to empower us to live for peace today. As people of faith and hope, we build on our common heritage and our desire for peace. Today, we join our hearts and voices with others and ask that you will break down the walls of hatred, bitterness, and separation. O God of peace, help our leaders of nations to make decisions that promote justice, respect, and peace on earth. We strive for tenacity in our personal and collective journeys towards peace, in our lives and families, in our communities, and in our world. We thank you for Dr. Whalen and other medical providers who use their skills and training to bring peace of mind and body to many. May we remember your call to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with our God. As we continue in this day and in the year ahead, may we model unity without uniformity, goodwill, and cooperation in all our relationships, our words, and our deeds. Finally, Lord, we ask that from our various virtual locations, you will gather us together this day under the shelter of your peace. This we pray. Amen.
The key to honoring the four chaplains year after year is to recognize that their spirit of service, their selfless dedication to others, is found in our community each day. The Jewish war veterans are proud to be able to participate in the annual selection committee to honor those from all walks of life, from across the capital region, who live up to the ideals of the four chaplains. Over 55 years, they have been medical professionals, clergy, educators, community organizers, veterans, and elected officials who devoted themselves to a variety of causes and concerns to benefit those in need across our region, across our state, and even across the globe. But as we have all noticed, 2020 was a year unlike any other. In that light, our selection committee for this year's Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award wanted to identify the one person who might best represent the larger community of healthcare workers across our state. For a year now, medical providers and the support staff at medical facilities have been on the front lines of the pandemic response. They have provided for testing of those concerned about having the illness, treated those most vulnerable to the disease, and have seen their work now move towards vaccinating our community, helping to protect those most at risk. They have endured the most risks of infection themselves. They have devoted themselves to saving lives and even have been the final comforts for those taken from our families by COVID-19. While we can't present to the many thousands of people across the community who don PPE each and every day to be there on the front lines for us, we did know that for our region's medical response and medical voice for science, prevention, and treatment, we could see Dr. Elizabeth Whalen, Albany County Commissioner for the Department of Health, each day. Her impact on the community cannot be understated. From testing sites to contact tracing efforts to limit the spread, to educational efforts to improve knowledge and awareness across the region, to the latest programs to ensure as wide an effort as possible is made for vaccinations. Not just for the healthcare and essential workers who care for us, but not for those most vulnerable and in need of what might be the life-saving difference between illness and health, but ultimately for all in our community. I am pleased to welcome Commander Fred Altman from Albany Post 105 for his remarks in the presentation of the Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award.
Thank you, Richard. Folks, to all of you who are joining us today from the comfort of your home or your office or perhaps your home office, welcome to the new world of virtual reality that we face today, and thank you for joining us. My name, as Rich has indicated, is Fred Altman. I'm privileged to serve as commander of the Jewish War Veterans of the United States for Post 105 of Albany, New York. And I want to begin by again thanking Pastor Bodden and the congregants of the First Reformed Church of Schenectady for inviting us again this year to present this award in this hallowed chapel, named for Reverend Poling. We have just come through a year of extraordinary strife and struggle, brought on by the perils of a 100-year pandemic. And even as we speak, these challenges still go on. Times such as these bring out ordinary people who heed a call to service, and they step up and they perform extraordinary acts of courage and sacrifice and service. Not for themselves, but for the good of others, for the good of the people of their community. Today, we will remember and we honor the courage and sacrifice of 4 military chaplains, as was explained before. 1 Catholic, 1 Methodist, 1 Jewish, and 1 Baptist, who selflessly made the ultimate sacrifice as they organized the evacuation of the torpedoed SS Dorchester on February 3rd, 1943, giving their life jackets to fellow shipmates that they might survive. And they were last seen on the sloping deck of the Dorchester, arm in arm, praying as the ship went down into the frigid waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. One person who survived that disaster was later quoted as saying, "It was the finest thing I have ever seen or hope to see this side of heaven." In the year just past, another army of our fellow citizens was called upon, and they too stepped up with remarkable courage and personal sacrifice in the face of great peril. And they have afforded and continue to afford life-saving and compassionate service to others. Our honoree today, Dr. Elizabeth Whalen, has answered that call, not only in her own capacity as Albany County Commissioner of Health, but also by her example as a most fitting representative of all of the frontline healthcare providers in this war against the virus. Dr. Whalen And this contemporary army are today our frontline professionals and defenders of our health and well-being. Without hesitation, they have and they continue to perform on a daily basis their duty at great sacrifice and great risk to themselves and to their families. Sadly, some have also made the ultimate sacrifice, both in our community and across our land. The similarities between the example of the Four Chaplains in 1943 and the selfless dedication to the health care army of today, for whom we honor Dr. Whalen, is unmistakable. And ironically, this war we face today, as Rich has said to you earlier, has cost the United States more souls than we lost in the military in all of World War II. Therefore, it is today my privilege to bestow the Jewish War Veterans Albany Post 105 Four Chaplains Award to the Honorable Dr. Elizabeth Whalen and all of those that she represents. And it's even more meaningful that we get to do this in this, the Reverend Clark V. Poling Memorial Chapel of the First Reformed Church of Schenectady, which was the home pulpit of Chaplain Poling, who was one of the honored four. Dr. Whalen, I can't shake your hand today, and we have to do away with some of the formalities that we sometimes do in this presentation, but I wish to say to you with equal sincerity, to you and to all of those that you represent, we salute you and thank you.
We'll now take just a moment and be joined by those representatives who could not be physically with us here today, but wanted to express their support and admiration for the presentation of this Brotherhood Award.
Hi, I'm Mayor Kathy Sheehan, and it is my pleasure to join you virtually for the 56th Annual Four Chaplains Memorial Service and Brotherhood Awards Program. I am grateful to the Jewish Veterans Post 105, as well as the First Reformed Church of Schenectady, for recognizing the incredible and outstanding work of Dr. Elizabeth Whalen. She has been an amazing public service during this incredible time in our history. We have been fighting this pandemic now for almost a year, and Dr. Whalen has truly been on the front lines. She has been working hard to ensure that we know how to keep ourselves and our families safe. Her team has been doing contact tracing from the very beginning, and now she's working on rolling out a vaccine. The vaccine is here, and she and her team are trying as hard as they can to ensure that everyone has equitable access to the vaccine and that we are getting the vaccine out as quickly as possible. Dr. Whalen really exemplifies what public service is about, what it means to sacrifice in order to save lives, and I want to congratulate her on receiving this honor.
This award means so much because the four chaplains gave up their life jackets on a sinking ship in the effort to save others. That same sacrifice, devotion, and love of others is seen every day in the actions of our frontline essential workers, who include our healthcare workers. As our Commissioner of the Albany County Department of Health, Dr. Whalen leads a team of highly dedicated professionals who have served our community nonstop since this crisis started. We've been waging this war against COVID-19 for almost a year now. Our healthcare workers have been faced with treating those who got sick providing comfort to those who were dying and putting their own lives at risk, as the Four Chaplains did. They've done everything from this virus to testing to contract tracing, inputting information to computer systems, and to help track the spread of COVID-19. Thank you to all the healthcare workers. Thank you to the entire Albany County Department of Health and Deputy Commissioner Mary Beth Miller. Congratulations to Dr. Whalen, who is the face we know as a representative of all healthcare workers here, throughout the state and across this country. Your commitment to public service is invaluable to our communities.
Hi, it's John McDowell, member of the New York State Assembly. Unfortunately, we can't gather together as we've done year after year, actually 56 years for the Jewish war veterans, for the Four Chaplains Memorial Service. COVID-19 has truly had an impact on all of us. And although there is light at the end of the tunnel, it's appropriate that we continue to practice social distancing and not gather in large crowds. I want to thank the committee for their selection this year of Dr. Liza Whalen as the recipient of the Brotherhood Award. As we know, the Four Chaplains, they gave of themselves to save others. And Liza Whalen has truly gone above and beyond to give of herself to make a difference, not only in the 300,000 plus residents here in Albany County, but really, she has become the leading voice of the Capital Region. Her regular appearances with our County Executive, Dan McCoy, seek to provide the factual information and the best practices and the information that we all need to know during this COVID-19 pandemic. As a fellow health professional, I've had the opportunity to work with Liza a little bit before she came to the County Health Department, but very closely over the last couple of years as we worked on the other epidemic going on in our region, which is the opioid epidemic. But far and above, COVID-19 has really put her skills to the ultimate test, and she has passed with glowing grades. I really, truly appreciate her sincerity, her intellect, but her willingness to share the information we need to hear, which is not always what people want to hear. And that, to me, is what makes her different in many aspects, and is why she is one of the leading voices here in the Capital Region. To the committee, wise choice. To Liza, thank you for your service, not only to Albany County, but the greater Capital Region. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Tonko, representative of New York's 20th Congressional District, and it is my honor, indeed, to join in recognizing Albany County Commissioner of Health, Dr. Elizabeth Whalen, as this year's Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award recipient for her steadfast leadership and dedicated service to our capital region. During these challenging months, Dr. Whalen, along with so many healthcare workers, served as a beacon of hope and recovery, helping to move our nation through this devastating COVID pandemic. For the last year, Dr. Whalen and so many more of our doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers have worked on the front lines of this crisis, each day putting their own lives at risk with selfless determination for the sake of saving others. Their heroic sacrifices epitomize that spirit of service of the Four Chaplains. In keeping with that spirit, I will end by quoting a song verse written by former Republican Senator and songwriter Orrin Hatch, commemorating the Four Chaplains. Quietly they walked amongst the wounded, without regard for color, race, or creed, speaking words of hope to those despairing, hurrying to meet each human need. Their legacy will live throughout the ages. Two Protestants, one Catholic, and a Jew, who gave their all while knowing death awaited. True holy men who did what God would do. Congratulations, Dr. Whalen, and thank you for your unwavering commitment to our capital region and all who call it home. On a personal level, I can say anytime we reached out to you throughout the years, but especially in this pandemic, focusing upon that challenge, always there, always responsive, always advising, and always truly compassionate. Thank you for pouring your human spirit into the betterment of those we call neighbors and friends.
At this time, I'd like to ask the commander of Bodden Post 105 to return to the podium, along with Senior Reverend Lynn Bodden, and our recipient of the 2020 Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award, Dr. Elizabeth Whalen.
Dr. Whalen, once again, it is my honor and privilege to present to you today this award, which is the Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award, given by Albany Post 105 of the Jewish War Veterans on an annual basis for about the past 60 years, I might add. And to you and to all of those whom you represent, you are in our grateful appreciation. We thank you, and we appreciate your service and the service of all of those that serve with you.
But wait, there is always more. One of the greatest things we do each and every year is to remind our audience and all of the participants who come and join us for this event in remembering the Four Chaplains and learning more about their service each and every year, so that you can share that amongst those you work with and out in the community. And in doing so, we want to share with you the Dan Kurzman book called No Greater Glory. It is the story of the four immortal chaplains, so that you can learn more of their history, of their service, and learn what it was like to serve with them as they sailed on the Dorchester on that fateful night.
We have one more item that I want to give you. This coin is what we call our challenge coin, and it's inscribed with the logo of our Jewish War Veterans, and it symbolizes the challenges we face and the service that is performed for the service of others, both not just in the military, but in our life in general, such as we are honoring you for today. And therefore, it is fitting also that I'd like to present you with this challenge coin.
Thank you.
We'll give you an elbow bump for congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have one too. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we offer up, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Elizabeth Whalen.
Thank you so much. It is truly my great pleasure to be here today, and I'd like to thank everyone that made this possible, including the Jewish War Veterans Selection Committee, Commanders Goldenberg and Altman that are here today, and Pastor Lynn, who I was very pleased to meet. This is a beautiful space, and knowing about the history contained in this space makes this honor even more important to me. Learning about the Four Chaplains and how they gave their life and their life jackets on a sinking World War II ship in an effort to save others has been a very moving experience for me. We often hear this generation referred to as the greatest generation, and this embodies that term. It's the ultimate sacrifice, and one that is being made and seen day in and day out by our essential workers, led by our frontline healthcare workers. I'm very proud to be a doctor, and I'm proud of the ability to serve our community. I am also proud to accept this recognition on behalf of all of the members of our healthcare community who have worked day and night for the past year to fight this invisible foe. The Albany County Department of Health and our staff have trained long and hard for this challenge. We've had exercises for years and have been recruiting volunteers who are committed to the mission. Our volunteers have trained through a medical reserve corps, prepared so that we would be ready for any public health emergency. We did not know that COVID-19 was what we were preparing for. As the Commissioner of the Albany County Department of Health, I lead a team of dedicated professionals who have been working nonstop since the pandemic started. We work together with our healthcare brothers and sisters across the capital region, across the country, and indeed across the world to continue to stem the tide of COVID-19, to try to control the disease with strategies such as social distancing, such as masking, such as hand washing, while waiting for more important strategies like vaccine to be developed. This has been a long process, and I am indebted to many people that have assisted my effort and the efforts of many healthcare workers in the past year. County Executive Dan McCoy has worked with me very tirelessly to help educate the public and to answer questions that people had. And I'm very happy that we have had the opportunity to share information to the public that has hopefully been helpful. The efforts that we have worked on together include making sure that those that are quarantined had the services that they need. This means getting people needed food, medication, and other essential items, and working with other departments within our county workforce to supplement this work has been a great lesson in teamwork and in group sacrifice for the good of the many. We know that our healthcare workers have been faced with treating those who got sick and provided comfort to those who died. They put themselves and their lives at risk every day doing this, just as the Four Chaplains did. Healthcare workers have done everything, from virus testing to contact tracing to help the spread of COVID-19. And now, happily, we're working to give vaccinations to protect our community. I would like to thank all of the healthcare workers that have worked so tirelessly, and thank the entire Albany County Department of Health staff and all of our healthcare workers from New York State and across the country. We endeavor to help the public with information that is based in science and facts, to help people understand something that's challenging to understand, and to help people help themselves and their families on issues around infection control and how they can protect themselves going forward with vaccination. As we record this, we are in the midst of a vaccination campaign and looking at getting more supplies coming in from the federal government. This is truly an effort that requires each and every one of us in the nation to be committed to working together to get through this. And I urge all of you, in addition to the behaviors that we've all become used to know that the vaccine is safe and effective. And when it comes your time, don't hesitate. Make sure that you do vaccinate. The Four Chaplains Brotherhood Award promotes unity without uniformity, encouraging cooperation and goodwill for all through businesses and services. I would like to again thank you, the to the Jewish War Veterans of Albany Post 105 and this First Reformed Church of Schenectady for believing that my life and the work of our healthcare teams has been led by these principles. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Whalen. As we move towards the conclusion portion of our ceremony today, we would like to welcome via video our benediction provided by Rabbi Susan Gulak on behalf of the New York State Department of Corrections.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikunecha. May God lift up God's countenance and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God give you the greatest of all blessings, the blessing of being at peace with yourself and the world around you. Amen.
The efforts across our community and across our state and nation to battle the pandemic has been likened to that of a war. For those of us in the veterans community, especially the Jewish war veterans of the United States of America here as part of the Capital District Council, we understand and empathize with all of the essential workers and healthcare professionals working tirelessly around our community on our behalf. We understand the concepts behind unity of effort, of service, and of sacrifices. And as veterans, we want to salute those efforts undertaken by healthcare professionals, essential workers, all on our behalf. For all who have tuned in, this concludes our 56th annual presentation of the Four Chaplains Commemoration and Presentation of the Brotherhood Award. May you all stay healthy, and may we all continue to wear masks, wash your hands, and volunteer for the vaccine as it becomes eligible for you. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.